I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Makeup perfect, hair perfect, outfit perfect. My name is Dawn Fox. I'm 31 years old, a mother of twins, Victor and William Jr., energetic 2-year-olds. My husband, William, is ready to go, looking more handsome today than the first time I met him during our first year of law school. I remember that day well. I had a full academic scholarship to college, Widener University. Graduated 4th in my class, majored in pre-law. But law school was a different thing, no scholarships. I was going to apply for student loans, but my parents, John and Maureen, had quietly taken out a home equity loan and paid for law school for me. I was stunned. But they told me that they never got the chance to help me pay for college, so this was their gift to me. Dawn, you earned your scholarship. Let us pay for law school for you. I remember my dad's tearful plea, and that's when I felt the tears run down my cheeks. I remember my childhood, my dad teaching me to ride a bike, my parents always making sure that my birthdays and Christmas felt special, my mom showing me how to apply makeup and discussing feminine issues that I would eventually encounter. The times we went to the beach and me and my dad would spend hours trying to build sand castles that would inevitably succumb to the incoming tides. My parents always worked hard to provide for me, always making sure that at least one was at one of my school events or sporting events. Their support was unwavering, especially when my dad asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up. I had told him that I wanted to be a lawyer. My dad didn't blink, try to discourage me, make excuses why I shouldn't be one. He only wanted to make sure that I really wanted to follow that path, and then bought me books that were written by retired lawyers and judges so I would have an understanding of what they experienced in their lives and careers. My mom would always make brownies when my report card showed that I made the honor roll. I learned how to make casseroles, cakes, soups, stews. If my mom could make it, I learned it. So Widener Law School it was. Criminal justice was my field, but I made sure I took classes in other areas to familiarize myself with everything that might help me in the future. And that's when I met Will. Tall, handsome, and surprisingly humble. William Fox. I knew who he was immediately. His father, Victor Fox, ran the biggest logistics company on the East Coast, from Maine to Florida and outward to Missouri. His family was all over the news, in magazines, newspapers, online. It was impossible to avoid exposure to them. Victor Fox had a reputation for being a tough-as-nails business tycoon, and I must admit, I researched his company online. 30-plus years and never a hint of underhanded dealings. That surprised me. Usually companies that big have dozens of closets with skeletons, but nothing. I even quietly asked a professor who practiced corporate law for 25 years about Fox Logistics. He told me that he never heard a bad word about the Fox company, even from competitors. And the fact that his older son, Victor Jr., was a rising star in the Department of Justice handling antitrust litigation. Well, if something unethical was happening, you don't want your son to sink his career trying to protect you. But William was quiet, almost uncomfortable with his family, the wealth, and attention. We first connected when our professor assigned a project that required us to pair up and look at a fictional case, and one would have to argue for while the other one against. We spent the first session together quoting and re-quoting both my cousin Vinny and A Few Good Men. We laughed uncontrollably. Will had an understated sense of humor. He could be quiet, even introspective in public, but in private he could tell the occasional off-color joke. But when we had to do the mock opening statements in class, William was very respectful, confident, and quite intelligent and articulate in his position. I was the same. That assignment led to coffee dates, then walks around campus, then visits to Longwood Gardens. Finally, dinners and kisses. Careful, Mr. William Fox. You are stealing my heart. And theft is criminal activity. I tried to playfully tease, but I couldn't hide my love for him anymore. My parents, John and Maureen Wells, were the first to know. I brought William home. My parents owned a 3-bedroom rancher in South Jersey. Dad was newly retired from United Parcel Service. My mom had long since retired as a nurse. My parents loved William. He and my dad bonded over sports, although William's New York Giants versus my dad's Philadelphia Eagles made the conversations awkward sometimes, depending on how each team was doing. They agreed on one thing football-related. The Dallas Cowboys sucked, but William was always respectful and my parents thought of him like a son. My parents sensed that there was tension between Will and his family. You always have a home here, my mom said as she gave him a hug that was pure maternal instinct, and I swear I saw moisture in his eyes. William's parents, Victor and Monica, were another story. When I first met them, they were receptive to my presence because I, like William, was going to be a lawyer. The conversation was pleasant until I was asked what type of law I was interested in. Criminal law, with a desire to work in the public defender's office. I thought that they would be impressed that I wanted to give back to society by helping people accused of crimes get competent representation. Big mistake. Public defender? Isn't that a risky career choice? Victor's question let me know that his mind about me was made up, and Will sensed it too. Monica didn't say anything then. She didn't say anything at all. But a relationship that started off with respect and a hint of warmth suddenly became as cold as Antarctica. Victor had a father-to-son talk. Okay, not father to son, more like father to impulsive teenager. Maybe Dawn was not right for a fox. Public defender? Son, she's expecting to live off your money. Victor loaded the cannon. But William, to his credit, stood his ground, reminding his father that it wasn't his choice to make. You don't get to live my life, Dad. I love her. Victor scoffed. Love comes and goes, especially if the money isn't there. Victor fired a warning shot across the bow. William refused to bend to his family's pressure. He was my rock, and I needed him even more when, at the beginning of our last year of law school, my parents died in a car crash. My parents, knowing Will would look out for me, decided to take a drive to visit my Uncle Bob in Kentucky. They were looking forward to the trip. It made them feel like the time in their marriage, before I came along, where they could just take off. But driving through West Virginia, my dad hit a deer on a rain-slick road, and their car flipped into a ditch. In an instant, my support was gone. I was devastated. I cried on Will's shoulder for days, unsure if I could handle everything, or even if I could go back to school. Will said only one thing. Your parents believed in you enough to pay for school. He was right. My dad cried with pride the day he told me that he and my mom took out a loan against the house to pay for me. I needed time, missing 3 weeks of school, dealing with funeral arrangements and insurance calls. A couple of days after their death, I made the arrangements that I hoped that I would never have to make. The viewing tested my soul. Seeing family that my parents were close with and hearing the stories of the time when I wasn't born became overwhelming at times. I asked Will to stand with me at the head of the line, because I felt I couldn't make it through the night without him, and he had come outside with me when I needed fresh air, which was often. And then came the physical finality, the church service, the cemetery, the luncheon afterwards. Family members who I grew up with were recalling stories of my parents' generosity, their commitment to family, their loyalty to friends. And all through it, Will said only what was needed. He held my hand as much as he could, and now it was time to quickly focus. I went through their fireproof safe. Will was a big help, organizing all their papers. My parents had a policy that paid off all debts for their house, which helped, because my school loan was tied to that. I tentatively returned to school. My class threw me a surprise welcome back party, bringing tears streaming down my face. Will organized it, and it helped reestablish my focus on classes. I made up the work I missed, Will working with me after classes, and we both graduated in the top 5 of our class. William's parents came, as did his older brother, Victor Jr. Victor told Will that he already had several interviews set up for his son with the most prestigious law firms in the country, but William told him that he wanted to work with the Legal Aid Society. Monica thought he was joking, but when she realized he wasn't, she coldly said her goodbyes and left. Victor just looked at his son and told him that he would talk to him Monday morning, 9 a.m., at his office atop the Fox Logistics Center in Midtown Manhattan. I don't think your parents liked your answer. I made a wry observation. I want to help people. Not those jackals that make 6 or 7 figures. People who have nowhere else to turn. Will's answer should have shocked me, but it didn't, because I understood that he wasn't like his father. William went to the meeting. Dad, please spare me the lecture. Victor looked at his son. You're my son. You could be the most feared corporate lawyer in the country. You could be a rising star like your brother. Yet, you choose to follow your girlfriend down into the gutter. The discussion went back and forth, with voices rising. Will came back around 1 p.m. He was pleasant, but I could tell he was tense. He said his father held a one-way lecture on how a Fox heir should aspire to greatness, not deal with the riffraff of society. But I told him that he has no say in how I live my life, Will stated with steel in his voice. I gave Will a hug and a kiss. We were scheduled for lunch Sunday at Fox Family Estate. And that's when the line was drawn. William had taken me out to dinner the day after the meeting with his father and produced a small velvet box. Dawn, I never thought I would meet a girl that is as real, as honest, as beautiful, and who has stolen my heart. Would you marry me? Will just proposed to me. I said yes immediately. William called his brother to let him know. Victor Jr. may have had his father's name, but he had something the old man didn't, a heart. And Vic was truly happy for us. He agreed to be Will's best man. But our happiness would be tested at that Sunday lunch. It started off pleasant, but cool. Monica hugged me like one who would hug a smelly stranger. Victor just nodded like he had more important people to meet and led William into the study. Dad, my answer isn't changing. I love Dawn, and I am going to marry her. William tried to preempt the lecture, but to no use. Look, William, you had your fun. Time to get serious. If you continue to associate with, no one will ever take you seriously. The conversation became heated, and William stood so close to his father that they could have been confused for Siamese twins. Meanwhile, there was an extra person who arrived for the meal. Tiffany Case was William's ex-girlfriend, tall, well-built, a brunette with stunning blue eyes, and she was there for one reason, and one reason only. She saw Will and suddenly she was swooning over him, always bringing up all the good times they had. Apparently, Vic had innocently told his parents about me and William's engagement, and that let his mom bring in Tiffany to remind him about what he could have. Tiffany's father was a retired judge, one that played golf with Victor. She even tried to put themselves in situations where I would notice and sow doubts about William's love for me. Oh, Monica, remember how happy William was that one Christmas? The one where he got the vacation? I knew what she was doing, making me feel like the outsider, the person beneath their social hierarchy. And William was so happy that he asked me to marry him. My remark was clinical. Tiffany shut up immediately, glaring at me like I was some poor girl who should be kissing the ground that she walks on. Monica stared at me like I just invited the devil himself to serve dinner, her eyes narrowing. I knew that Monica had an agenda, and that agenda revealed itself after lunch. Tiffany had excused herself, apologizing that she had a previous engagement, and left stewing. And that left me and the matriarch. Will had told me about a time in his life when his mother wasn't so rigid in the elite lifestyle, telling me about the time she helped him and Vic dye eggs for Easter and helped them build pillow forts in the living room, and how she actually enjoyed watching our faces as we opened our Christmas presents. But as Fox Logistics grew, so did her barriers, and so did the elitism. Monica told me to follow her into the sunroom out on the back patio. There she mentioned about bloodlines and societal expectations for a member of the Fox family. William can go on to do great things, accomplish so much, but if he is carrying excess baggage, those aspirations die. I knew what she was talking about. She didn't consider me acceptable for the family, whose dreams and aspirations, his or yours. My question cut out the pretense. I sat there looking at Monica, my eyes locking with hers. Don't punch above your status, Annie. You're just an average girl who happened to get lucky when she met my son. Here's a $50,000 check. It will help with the separation. Monica said the one thing that I never thought she would, the Annie reference. She hinted that because my parents were gone, that I was waiting for some daddy warbucks to save me. My rage was building. But before I could respond, William had arrived early enough to watch from the door. He was a calm man, but his voice rose and told her in no uncertain terms that he was going to marry me, whether they approved or not. And don't you ever disrespect Dawn again, understand? Victor came in and told us to leave, but not before telling his son that he was going to be removed from the family trust forever. Take that trust and stick it where the sun doesn't shine. Will's words shot through the air like a cannonball. We left immediately, before they could respond, and made the 4-hour drive in silence. Going from Westchester County in New York to our home in South Jersey was brutal because of traffic. All I did was hold Will's hand, unsure of the exact emotions running through him. We arrived home. My parents' old house. Our house. We caught a break because we didn't have to pay rent, and some money was left over from the insurance to pay property taxes. We should start our own firm. Will's suggestion caught me off guard. I had never thought about it, but I assess his statement. What would we specialize in? I asked him gently, letting him know that I was willing to listen. One where we eventually have enough associates to handle everything. I look at Will, holding his hand. We have enough room out back if we wanted to build an office. Or we can look for an office, whatever you think is best. I let him make the decision. He smiles, hugs me, and gives me a kiss. Office. I would like to keep the house private, he said with an intimacy. I rub his cheek. I agree. But I also think that we should work first, so we gain experience before we move out on our own, I offer. And it made sense. Will agreed. So we started our new jobs the following week. Public defender paid enough to cover property taxes, utilities, maintenance, upkeep, which included having our basement remediated and remodeled because there was a leaky window frame that my dad never got around to fixing and mold developed. But we had a clean bill of health from the township inspector, so we worked on making it our little privacy room, wet bar included, all the while saving money for our future office. The following week, a certified letter arrived from Victor Fox, with paperwork making it official. William was officially removed from the family trust. Furthermore, he and his heirs were officially removed from his parents' will, and he would no longer be allowed on the family estate. Security would be required to call the police to report trespassing. The cutoff was absolute, surgical, final. I take it that your father is hoping for a reunion? My joke falls flat. William was upset, but he chuckled. He told me he wasn't, but I knew him better than he thought. He offered to cook me dinner, and then watch a movie afterwards. Dinner and a movie? Wow, Mr. William Fox, I feel like a teenager again. I playfully nudged him in the elbow. 2 years later, our careers were okay, but we were ready for some big life decisions. We married in a civil ceremony down in Washington, D.C., so Vic could be Will's best man. I had my friend Jennifer be my maid of honor, and with enough money saved, we decided that now was the time to open our own practice. Although I took his last name, I asked if we could name our firm Fox & Wells Law Group, LLC. I wanted to honor my parents, and he supported the idea 100%. Our firm grew slowly. My Aunt Mary was a former legal secretary who had retired 5 years before and hated not working full-time. We offered a modest salary to start, but we balanced that with an equity stake in our company. Your Uncle Bert is a pain in the ass. All he wants to do since he retired is try to recapture his teenage years. I would have worked for free, she states dryly. Will and I laughed so hard we almost fell down. Our usual cases in the beginning dealt with driving offenses and low-level drug offenses. But our break came when Will represented a young African-American who was charged with beating up the son of a township mayor. Will looked at the evidence, and he instantly spotted that the investigation was sloppy. There was no real evidence tying the defendant to the crime. What the police had was a fistfight between the defendant and victim at a mall 2 months before, and the defendant's history of assault. But the last incident was 7 years before. The defendant was now an honor student at Temple University, and eyewitnesses could potentially place the defendant at an Olive Garden on Roosevelt Boulevard at the time of the assault. I think the cops and prosecutors got lazy with this one, Will said to me, and I looked at the evidence and agreed. Since we didn't have an investigator, I tracked down potential witnesses, and they confirmed in sworn affidavits that the defendant was with them at the time of the incident. In fact, they got gas at the station up the street, and they had video cameras. We scheduled a pre-trial conference with the prosecution, produced our evidence, and forced them to reopen their investigation. Charges were dropped not long after. It gave us press, it gave us our push. Eventually, the firm took off. We hired more associates and a receptionist for our office and diversified into different areas: criminal, divorce, probate, and contract law. We later added a woman just out of law school, and her specialty was IP law. Although William's family had basically disowned him, he had followed the business from the outside. He knew they lost 4 major clients to an up-and-coming company, Apex Global. He wondered how his father was taking the news. Knowing my father, he is stewing. But his pride won't let him adjust his strategy. Will felt a pang of sympathy. He hated watching his father's company suffer those contract losses. About 6 months later, we had a continuing legal education conference that we were required to attend. William saw a friend from law school, Brad Davis, who worked for Apex Global. He came over to talk to us, and during the course of our conversation, he joked about seeing a guy who looked like Greg Brady at Apex's headquarters. Hey, Will and Dawn, how are you? Haven't seen you two since graduation. Congratulations on your marriage. You two were always perfect for each other. How's your family? They are doing well, Will replied. Brad didn't know about the estrangement. You know what's funny, Will? I occasionally see this distinguished older gentleman entering and leaving through our service entrance. I swear he looks like Greg Brady's twin brother. Isn't that funny? William wasn't sure he heard correctly, so he went along with the conversation. Well, you know, Brad, everybody has a doppelganger. Why shouldn't Greg? He laughed, I laughed, and Brad laughed. But I didn't realize that only Brad and I found it truly funny. Later on, in our hotel room, William looked visibly concerned. I asked him what was wrong, and after some hesitation, he explained that if what Brad Davis said was true, it meant that Fox Logistics' chief legal counsel was meeting on the down low with their biggest competitor. And that would explain why they were losing clients. I gasped. Corporate espionage by a lawyer was so incomprehensible, I immediately sat down and went silent. I asked Will what he was going to do, but when he grabbed his phone, I knew. He dialed his father's number. It went to voicemail. Will left a message that he needed to talk, that it was important. He then called his mom, and he left the same message. No response. He called his brother, Vic. Vic, I'm sorry it's late, but I really need you to do me a favor. I need to talk to Dad as soon as possible and not at the office. Call him, please. Tell him to call me. Vic promised he would call, but ever since the estrangement, he was leery about discussing Will with his parents. 11 p.m. Will's phone rang. He answered. This better be important. Otherwise, I will tie you up in court for harassment. Your little business won't survive. Victor's voice came across, sharp and with bad intent. He knew about our business, but how? Will asked if he could come to the house Sunday night, not to eat, not to ask for money, not to do anything but relay troubling information he came across that he needed to discuss in private, just the two of them. Fine. You have 5 minutes, 2 p.m. tomorrow. 1 minute late, you're trespassing. Victor ended the call before Will could respond. For the first time since I met Will, he was nervous, pacing back and forth. I offered to drive to his parents, but he insisted on being behind the wheel. So, after the conference, we headed up to West Chester. I made social conversation as best I could with Monica, while Will and his father went into the study. Victor looked at his son, expression ranging from neutral to annoyance. Will relayed the information that he came across. Everything. Dad, I know we have had our differences, but I love you. And when I saw that Fox lost those contracts, I assumed that the market changed. But I ran into my friend Brad, who works for Apex Global. He told me that Greg Brady has been meeting with someone at Apex. always entering and exiting through the service entrance. I think Greg may be selling them confidential client information. Suddenly, the business tycoon's expression turned hard, studying Will's face. Greg Brady has been with me for 30 years. What proof do you have that he is working against me? Will didn't have definite proof. Hell, he didn't even have circumstantial evidence. But he knew something was wrong. I have no proof, Dad. But ask yourself this question. Why is Fox Logistics suddenly losing contracts that they had handled without any incidents? What is causing those clients to bolt? What is Apex offering that suddenly puts your company at a disadvantage? Dad, your business ethics are above reproach. So why are these companies leaving? Victor thought for a moment. Will asked questions that brought the issue into focus. He then dialed a number. Peter Smith, I need something and I need it fast. He explained what he wanted, done, and he wanted it done with the utmost secrecy. Why? Why tell me? Making an accusation like this against a respected member of the bar could get you disbarred before you made it back to your house, Victor asked his son. Because despite what happened between us, I want your company to be successful, because you have put yourself through hell building the biggest company in the eastern United States. Victor looked at his son, but said nothing further. He felt a sense of betrayal, but not from his son. Will came out, gave his mom a kiss goodbye, and we left for home. Victor's private investigator went to work. Surveillance of Greg Brady did indeed prove he was meeting with Apex. Bank records showed why he was selling out Victor Fox. He had run up massive gambling debts. Apex offered the lifeline. 2 months later, the hammer dropped. Victor called Greg Brady to his office. The lawyer arrived to find 2 federal agents waiting for him. Why, Greg? Why didn't you come to me? Why did you have to sell us out to Apex? Victor was hurt. He considered Greg a friend, but that friendship died. Greg Brady was escorted out of the Fox Logistics building, not with a cardboard box, but with handcuffs. He had been caught passing confidential client information to Apex Global. He was arrested on numerous state and federal charges, the most serious being corporate espionage. The feds did a cursory inspection because Fox Logistics turned over everything preemptively, giving investigators all the information. Disbarment happened within 2 weeks, once Greg flipped on Apex and admitted his guilt. Apex Global was hit with severe fines and penalties. The entire board of directors were suspended pending termination. They had authorized the plan. The fines totaled nearly $1 billion, and the company was put under government oversight. Fox then sued, and by the time the trial concluded, Apex Global was crippled financially, and they filed for dissolution. Victor came home from work the day Greg Brady was arrested. He looked at Monica. Will helped me. His voice was quiet. Will? What did he do? Monica was curious. He alerted me that there might be a problem with Greg, and our company's investigation proved him right. Greg cost us 4 of our biggest customers. If Will had remained quiet, we would have lost a lot more. Monica was speechless. She kept thinking about that Sunday, her abhorrent behavior towards Dawn and Will. She looked at Victor. Should we call them? Her question went unanswered. They were going to need some time thinking about how they treated Will and Dawn. Victor poured himself a scotch and sat down in his chair. He was quiet. It was the type of quiet that Monica had seen only a couple of times, and it told her that her husband was troubled. Do you ever wonder why William chose Widener Law School instead of an Ivy League institution? Victor asked, but before Monica could answer, Victor had the answer. It's because the Ivy League has gotten a reputation where connections matter more than merit. He knew that. He wanted to earn his lot in life through his hard work. That's why Vic went to Stanford, where he could set his own path as well. Victor took a decent sip of the scotch. I used to feel proud that I asked the Attorney General to give Vic a chance at the DOJ, but he has shown himself to be a lethal litigator on his own. He didn't need my nudge. The scotch was empty. But Will was determined to show the world that he didn't need my influence. And you know what? That drive saved me from myself. Monica came over and did something that she hadn't done in decades. She sat on her husband's lap and just wrapped her arms around him. As bad as you feel about your treatment of William, I hate myself for the way I treated Dawn. She didn't deserve what I did and said to her. I guess we both have to live with ourselves for our terrible behavior. After Greg was arrested, Will's phone buzzed. It was Vic. Jesus, Will, what happened? Will explained everything to his brother. Greg, holy shit, Dad must be devastated. Will considered his father. I would think he's more angry than anything. He made the decision to launch the investigation. Will was right. His father could have ignored him, but didn't. Will invited Vic for dinner at our house, and he accepted. He showed up on a Friday night, and the brothers hugged, catching up with each other's lives. Vic dropped a bombshell. Amazon tried to poach him, offering him $5 million a year to keep the government off their back. Jeff Bezos talked to him personally. Apparently, his reputation as an antitrust litigator has made him a hot name for companies constantly skirting the edges. Are you going to take the offer? Will asked, curious about what his brother was going to do. No, and I will tell you why. It's because of you and Dawn. Both of you could work for the most prestigious criminal defense firms in the country, yet you choose to follow your own path. I rather work for an organization that keeps people honest and wouldn't expect me to skirt ethical standards. Both Will and I were stunned. Vic's name actually put fear into the hearts of companies that wanted to merge, causing delays so that the companies could be in full antitrust compliance. Will told him that he was proud to be his little brother. It was Sunday, a month after Greg Brady was arrested, that we found out that we were going to have a baby. But before Will and I could celebrate, we heard a knock on our door. I answered. It was Victor Fox. Stunned, I invited him inside. For the first time since I met him, Victor waited for permission to sit. Will offered his hand and insisted he sit. Victor and Will sat on the sofa. I made us coffee. Thank you, Will. You saved Fox Logistics. That bastard Greg was selling us out. Apparently, he racked up heavy gambling debts and Apex caught wind and offered him a lifeline. And the worst part? I asked him to investigate why our clients were leaving. I should have been smarter. Will looked at his father. That was the story I heard from Brad. Look, Dad, you followed standard protocol. Your lead counsel is supposed to conduct those types of investigations. It just shows how desperate Greg was, that he would lie to your face. Just don't be too hard on yourself. Remember, Jesus was betrayed by one of his trusted followers. The important thing is you took decisive actions once you became aware of potential malfeasance. I hate to ask you, but is there any chance that you can add Brad Davis to your legal department? He is an ethical lawyer and he doesn't deserve to go down with Apex. If it wasn't for him, nobody would have known about Greg. Victor considered the request. Done. Give me his number. I want to call him myself. Will felt relieved. Brad really was a good guy, one that didn't deserve to have his reputation burned by a crooked company. Dad, we have something to tell you. You're going to be a grandfather. We just found out today. Victor sat silently, looking at Will and me, when I noticed his eyes looked damp. Dawn, Will, can you forgive me for treating you the way I did? It was a heartfelt request, and I broke down so the men wouldn't. It was the first time I ever saw pure, unapologetic humanity. From Victor Fox. It was also the first time that he saw William as his own man, not some piece to be moved around. With the news of our pregnancy out, I received a phone call from the woman I thought was gone forever. Monica Fox. Her voice was tentative, unsure, not the dominating, cold, matriarchal tone that she had always used with me. She asked if she could drive down to have lunch with me. I considered her request and agreed. I offered to meet her in Trenton, kind of neutral for the both of us. We set a date. I saw a boutique Italian cafe online and sent her the address. Wednesday afternoon, 1 p.m., we met. I was unsure of what was in store, so I approached with caution. Monica arrived on time, but not wearing clothes that screamed obscene wealth. She was actually dressed very casually. I stood up to greet her, and she surprised me by giving me a warm, motherly hug. She actually buried her head in my shoulder and cried. Monica Fox was crying into my shoulder. Dawn, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I want you to know that I could never forgive myself for the way I treated you. I'm so sorry. Monica's voice was cracking as she said those words. Next thing I knew, I had tears running down my face. The waitress who appeared to take our drink order was unsure of what was happening, so she said she would come back in a couple of minutes. I understand what you were doing, Monica. You were trying to protect William from someone who you thought was beneath him and your family. My words made her freeze. But one thing I learned, you and Victor staked out your position. And then you let us live our lives. And I actually appreciate that. You could have made it difficult for us, yet you chose to stay away. So don't harbor any resentment towards you. In fact, I never hated you. I just wouldn't abandon Will. But Monica, I would love for you and Victor to be a part of your grandchildren's lives. And would love to be able to call you and plan surprise parties for William. He needs his parents in his life more than he cares to admit. Monica looked at me, and she understood that I had forgiven her a long time ago. But she also understood that I needed to get things off my chest. The lunch turned out to be pleasant. Monica said that she wanted to plan my baby shower, if it was all right with me. I told her that I would be honored. She already had a list of restaurants in the area that would make suitable places for gatherings, and we promised to call each other on Sundays just to catch up, and for me to give her updates on the baby. It was the following month, after the ultrasound, that I called her and told her that she was going to be grandmother to twin boys. I had to ask if she was still there, because the 10 seconds of silence caught me by surprise. Will made plans to expand the house, extending it out to the fence by our bedroom, and out into the yard. He went to work on setting up the nursery with Brad's help. Victor had called Brad just after leaving our house that Sunday and asked, not demanded, but asked, Brad if he would consider working for Fox Logistics. He accepted immediately, and once he found out that Will had made sure that his career would be protected after the Apex fallout, sent a handwritten note thanking him, and paying for a family vacation to the Poconos when the twins were old enough to enjoy it. No expiration date on the package. Will asked his father and brother if they would be godfathers to the boys, while Dawn asked his mom and friend Jennifer if they would be godmothers. It was then that the bridge became complete. We were now on a journey to becoming a family. One thing that absolutely melted my heart was watching Will get up at 2 a.m. and change diapers and feed bottles. He learned quickly, and he made sure that I got as much rest as I could. We didn't have nannies, so it was all him. He became the superstar dad in my eyes. Will and I enjoyed the trip to the estate, but not as much as Monica and Victor, who actually played catch with the boys. Vic arrived, and Will and I were both surprised when he showed up with a woman who was quiet and unassuming. He introduced us to Kelly Smith, elementary school teacher. He said they had been dating for 2 months. Even his parents didn't know, and both Victor and Monica were as shocked as we were. But the past had changed people, and Kelly was immediately welcomed into the family. No performative act, just a warm, natural acceptance. Will and I look at each other and smile. We head out the door. Will puts the twins in their car seats. I make sure everything is packed. We are enjoying a long weekend with Will's parents. They built a private playground on the property, just for them. I think of my parents. I know they are smiling. We weren't sure if Victor and Monica ever changed their minds about the trust or their wills, but before we left, Victor admitted that when he found out about the pregnancy, he quietly had the trust and the will amended. The twins were now part of the trust. He had been hesitant to tell us because money had been the rift that broke the family apart. I told Victor that we never worried about the trust or will. The boys were going to be raised to value family, but I thanked him, and I gave him a hug and a kiss on the cheek. He just stood there, a warm smile on his face as he waved goodbye. We break ground on our new office next week. We are up to 20 employees, and we are running out of room at our current location. Aunt Mary is still there. She has transitioned from legal secretary to office manager, and she runs an office built on treating people with respect. And that makes work more emotionally satisfying than a big payday from a well-off client.